Good afternoon. I'm Representative Larry Pittman. I appreciate you being here today. The reason we're here is House Bill 562. I have always promised the citizens, ever since I began running for office, that I would always defend their right to keep and bear arms. We had a few bills put forward this year in the House concerning gun rights, and the leadership chose to roll everything into one bill, and they've kind of picked and choosing what they wanted from the bills that were put out there to make up an omnibus gun bill, which is House Bill 562. And ever since we've been working on this, there have been some groups who have been trying to put pressure on our leadership either to abandon the bill or at least weaken it considerably. And in response to that, GRNC has asked me to have a press conference with them to come and to talk about the bill and to talk about some of those efforts by opponents of the bill and to answer some of those issues that they have raised. And so at this time, I'm going to ask GRNC President Paul Valone to come forward, and he'll take it from here.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that very much. Representative Pittman, by the way, has been a stalwart for our rights in the General Assembly. I wish we had 1,000 legislators just like him. As he said, my name is Paul Valone. I direct Grassroots North Carolina since 1994. We have been the state's primary gun rights organization. I should say Bill of Rights organization because we actually do tackle other items from the Bill of Rights occasionally. Essentially, we want to preserve individual liberty. That is our primary mission. Since 1995, when North Carolina passed our law enabling citizens to carry concealed handguns, violent crime in our state has dropped by 45%, with corresponding drops in rape, robbery, murder, and aggravated assault. Grassroots North Carolina was involved in drafting and passing that original bill, and we have since worked to improve our concealed handgun law by removing obstructions to permit applications and expanding the number of places where people can protect themselves. Our primary goal is to deter violent crime. According to researcher John R. Lott of the Crime Prevention Center, who studied multiple victim public homicides, since 1958, with only 2 exceptions, all of the mass shootings in the United States have taken place where guns are supposedly prohibited. Secure in the knowledge that no one can stop them, criminals, sociopaths, and terrorists are drawn to these victim disarmament zones. Our goal is to eliminate those zones. Each time we've expanded our concealed carry law and the ability of lawful North Carolinians to protect themselves, our opposition has predicted blood in the streets. When we passed concealed carry back in 1995, they predicted shootouts at traffic lights. When we passed restaurant carry in 2013, they predicted drunk permit holders would be shooting each other at bars. When we passed a bill for limited carry on educational properties, they insisted college students with permits would shoot each other at football games. I defy you to cite a single example of any of these, much less a trend. Each time they have predicted mayhem, each time they have been wrong. So too, editorialists are now expecting mayhem from House Bill 562, the Second Amendment Affirmation Act. Some of these are based on ignorance, such as the editorials in the Raleigh News and Observer and elsewhere, which railed about the minor changes the bill has to educational property provisions contained in the bill. All the while, these editorials were blissfully ignorant of the fact that limited campus carry has been the law since 2013 without incident. But other attacks targeting House Bill 562 have been political in nature and part of national agendas. With respect to the medical privacy aspects of the bill, which prevent politically motivated healthcare providers from prying into whether their patients own guns, the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics have a long-standing agenda to work toward banning private ownership of firearms. We, by the way, have a handout outside on that if you'd like to see it. The fact is, politically motivated questions or treatment of patients is a violation of medical ethics and is called a boundary violation. But the bill faces a more insidious opponent in the form of billionaire anti-gun zealot Michael Bloomberg, who is now spending upwards of $1 million to kill House Bill 562, using television ads which falsely claim the bill will abolish gun purchase background checks. Bloomberg staffers claim to represent a grassroots movement of 100,000 or so people in North Carolina. In truth, they number perhaps 24 and variously call themselves Moms Demand Action, Moms Rising, Everytown for Gun Safety, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. These paid staffers and a few activists have distributed literature in the names of all of those organizations right here at the General Assembly. So to better describe our response to those attacks, please allow me to introduce Josette Chimel, GRNC's Director of Development, after which I will field questions. Josette?
My name is Josette Chimel. Like everyone else at Grassroots North Carolina, I work as a volunteer, taking time away from my work, my family, and my friends to defend our rights. I do it because laws enhancing the rights and abilities of citizens to protect themselves when the police can't actually empowers women. Women who are forced to cross darkened parking lots at night. Women who live alone with apartments with doors that can be easily kicked in. And women who have left abusive partners and are supposedly protected by restraining orders worth no more than the paper that they're written on. The bad news is we can't match Michael Bloomberg's billions. The good news, we don't have to. Unlike Bloomberg's many AstroTurf front groups, we represent real grassroots supporters. The same supporters who directed tens of thousands of emails and phone calls to our legislatures in support of House Bill 562. So with that, we would like to announce the kickoff of a new project, North Carolina Moms Against Bloomberg, featuring not the professional actors and paid staffers that Mr. Bloomberg uses, but rather real North Carolina mothers. These mothers will be featured in radio spots that begin running today, which debunk the Bloomberg ads and finish by declaring, I am a North Carolina mom, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
My name is Stephanie. I'm a North Carolina mom. Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
My name is Beverly. I'm a North Carolina woman. Bloomberg does not speak for me.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm a North Carolina resident and mother, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm a North Carolina mom, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
Hello, my name is Tiffany, and I'm a North Carolina mom, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
Mommy, I didn't know you were going.
Hi, I'm Diane, a North Carolina mom, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
In fact, we invite everyone to say, I'm a North Carolinian, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
I'm a North Carolinian, and Michael Bloomberg does not speak for me.
So, take your AstroTurf back to New York, Mr. Bloomberg. Your gun control and your attempts to control our people are not welcome here. To our state legislators, we say, listen to the people of North Carolina, the real grassroots, and bring House Bill 562 to the floor for a vote, intact and in its present form. Thank you. I'm going to relinquish the podium to Paul Valone for any questions.
May I answer any questions about the bill or about GRNC's positions on the bill? Essentially, we are promoting House Bill 562 primarily because we are interested in the repeal of the Jim Crow era purchase permit system and also the medical privacy provisions. There are other provisions to the bill, but those are two things which primarily concern us. Unfortunately, Mr. Bloomberg is disseminating some misinformation about the bill. His radio or his television spots claim that it would abolish background checks. I'm afraid that's not true. Under our present system, a sheriff, which by the way was implemented in 1919, 1 year after Missouri implemented a similar law, which was in response to race riots and was designed to keep minorities from obtaining firearms. Our pistol purchase permit law essentially involves the sheriff doing a background check and issuing a slip of paper which remains good for 5 years. It is entirely plausible, as our radio spots point out, that someone could get one of these permits, go out and commit a crime, be disqualified from owning firearms, yet use that permit to bypass the National Computerized Background Check System, NICS. If we repeal the purchase permit law, then those background checks will be done at the time of sale, not as much as 5 years earlier. We've heard from Mr. Bloomberg that 40% of gun transfers are private sales, and that the private sales would then allow criminals to obtain firearms. As documented by PolitiFact, that assertion is false. The data it was based on was actually in part prior to the adoption of the Brady Law, when background checks weren't even required under federal law. And in fact, the study's own authors, Phil Cook, routinely says that neither he nor anyone else know how many of these transfers are in fact private transfers. So that information is false. We've heard from the Bloomberg crowd that Missouri experienced a 25% increase in its murder rate after repealing its purchase permit law. Well, that's a partial truth. In fact, what happened was that in the 5 years prior to repealing the purchase permit law, Missouri homicide increased by 32%. In the 5 years after that, it actually dropped to a 17% increase relative to the rest of the United States. Clearly, there's a problem in Missouri, but it has nothing to do with their purchase permit law. Essentially, that is our presentation for today. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
What are you hearing from the speaker and from Rules Chairman Lewis on this?
We get mixed reviews. Right now, I know they're very concerned with the budget. We do know that there are some members of the House, of the caucus, who have problems with some provisions. We are working to address those provisions. For example, the medical providers had initially pointed out that, in theory at least, a patient who presented a danger to health, self or others could not be reported to governmental authorities as owning guns. This bill does nothing to hamper the doctor-patient relationship or the treatment anyway. Yes, sir.
So whatever percent of gun sales are private, doesn't matter. If it's 5% or 10%, who is going to perform that federal background check in the private sale? And who is going to make sure that occurs?
Well, we should keep something in mind, okay? The purchase permit system as it applies to private transfers right now is illusory. The fact is, most of the population doesn't even know the law exists, much less adhere to it. And consequently, it's rarely used, and because the permits are utterly untraceable, it's utterly unenforceable. Moreover, at this point, we now have the majority of our transactions of rifles and shotguns don't require a purchase permit at all. So we feel that the point of purchase background check more than offsets any other provisions.
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I am. Federal law is silent on individual purchases. It only applies to licensed dealers. So I think somebody, maybe I misunderstood, but I think somebody said, how are you going to comply with federal law?
It does
It's
comply with
silent
federal
on
law.
individual purchases.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Current pistol permit system, does it allow the sheriff to discriminate against who he wants to give a permit to?
Unfortunately, because the system was designed to be highly discretionary, right now sheriffs can deny any permit they arbitrarily deem to be not of good moral character, whatever that means. In 1919, good moral character meant they would deny permits to minorities. Now, I've had applicants tell me they were denied a purchase permit because they took antidepressants in 1985 after the death of their spouse. I have another applicant who says the sheriff denies him a permit because he's now 45. At the age of 21, he went AWOL briefly from the military to find his wife, who had run off on him, and got an other than honorable discharge, which, by the way, is not disqualifying under federal law. Only a dishonorable discharge would be. So We now have 100 sheriffs and 100 sets of issuing criteria. We have sheriffs in Durham, for example, who obstruct the issuance of permits as much as possible by requiring notarized character affidavits. In Orange County, I recently had a conversation with the sheriff, and they're apparently requiring 3 notarized character affidavits and 2 references from law enforcement officers just to buy a handgun for self-protection. Anyone else?
Do you think that's discriminatory against certain ethnicities?
I am working on a couple of cases where that sort of discrimination may have been the case. It certainly was in the past. Now I think it's difficult to say. I won't say it until I can get further evidence. Yes.
So I'm hearing from a lot of pediatricians that they're concerned about families that have unsecured guns in their homes and that's why they're asking. It's a safety issue for children. You know, what do you say to that?
Well, first off, my question is this. What qualifications does a healthcare provider have? What training do they have to decide what is or is not the safe storage of a handgun? They're not trained on this. Perhaps we should bring in concealed handgun instructors to consult with them instead, because they'd be far more qualified to comment on that topic than pediatricians. Yes, sir.
Doesn't state law already require you to secure a handgun?
That is correct. If the firearm is misused by a resident minor, it is a crime in the state of North Carolina and has been since 1993. Yes, ma'am.
House Bill 562 didn't make crossover, so what's next with that?
It was actually taken into rules and a fiscal note was added. It's immune to crossover, so it remains alive today. And in fact, we have a PCS, a proposed committee substitute, which actually addresses some of the concerns that, previous concerns like the one I was describing about the medical privacy provision. Yes, sir.
Mr. Valone, if this bill doesn't move or it gets amended to a point you can't accept it, are you preparing to line up a whole host of primary challenges for Republicans? I heard somebody in your ranks drew a pretty clear line about your feelings about this bill.
Well, let's say that Grassroots North Carolina has a very robust candidate evaluation system we call Remember in November. And we track votes on gun-related issues, we track bill sponsorship, and we track a measure called bill support based on whether leadership moves or does not move given pieces of legislation. Suffice to say that those legislators who obstruct the ability of lawful North Carolinians to protect themselves will certainly receive additional scrutiny in upcoming elections. Yes, ma'am.
How much are you spending on this new radio campaign that you're kicking off today?
That is ongoing as we speak. I can't put a number on it because we've been fundraising as we speak, and as the fundraising comes in, we are going to continue to expand the campaign.
Can you tell us which markets they're in?
Right now we're marketing Raleigh and Charlotte, and we will be expanding that as the time goes on. Yes, sir.
Would you say that it would be more or less than Bloomberg's millions?
I would say it would be a small fraction of Bloomberg's billions or millions that he's spending on this thing. We don't have the sort of financial resources he does, but as Josette was kind enough to point out, we don't have to, because we have the will of the people of North Carolina, not the, I guess, actions of a megalomaniac from New York. If that's all, I think we can adjourn the press conference. Thank you very much.